Last night, Louise and I were flying home from Washington, D.C., where we were all last week. We did our show from there, as you may recall. And although I subscribed to Harper's Magazine, I didn't have the current issue with me, so we grabbed one in the newsstand in D.C., which was a good thing because we were stuck on the ground last night for several hours in Chicago because there were thunderstorms going through, and we got in at 1 a.m. And here I am on 5 hours sleep if I sound semi-coherent. But in any case, I'm reading this issue of Harper's. I'm reading this article, the cover story, the food bubble, how Wall Street starved millions and got away with it. And I want to share with you just a couple of sentences. Fred Kaufman wrote this thing that just totally blew my mind. And I'm sitting here sharing this with Louise. First of all, it opens, the history of food took an ominous turn in 1991 at a time when no one was paying much attention. That was the year that Goldman Sachs decided our daily bread might make an excellent investment. And then toward the end of the story, here, just a couple of sentences here, bankers had taken control of the world's food. Money chased money, and 1 billion people went hungry. Remember the food riots of a couple of years ago around the world? The worldwide price of food had risen by 80% between 2005 and 2008. And unlike other food catastrophes of the past half century or so, the United States was not insulated from this one. Could it be because it was our banksters who were doing it? As 49 million Americans found themselves unable to put a full meal on the table. 1 in 5 kids came to depend on food kitchens. In Los Angeles, nearly 1 million people went hungry. In Detroit, armed guards had to watch over grocery stores. And then the question, could this happen again? And I came back and I shared this story with Sean, our executive producer, and said, we've got to cover this. This is a BFD, as Joe Biden would say. And so Frederick Kaufman, the contributing editor to Harper's Magazine, author of this month's this month's cover story, which is just absolutely remarkable, The Food Bubble, How Wall Street Starved Millions and Got Away with It. He's also the author of several books, including A Short History of the American Stomach. You can check out the new article over at harpers.org. Frederick, welcome to the program, first of all.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom.
Great to have you with us. We did contact Goldman Sachs, invited them to come on this program. They specifically said, no thank you. Stephen Strongen, the head of global investment research, has written a letter in response to your article, and that letter stands. And so I'm going to toss a couple pieces of that to you. But first, Frederick, give us a summary. I've shared a few words from your article, but give us the big picture here on your article.
Well, I think we can all remember that back in 2008, the price that we paid for our weekly groceries went way up, that milk went up and eggs went up and the price of hamburger meat went up. And what was behind this unbelievable rise in the price of food? And that's what I went to find out about a year ago. And what I discovered was that there is an incredible pressure being put on the price of food, not actually from any issue in the food supply. And one of the things we have to get clear right from the start, whenever we talk about the issues of global hunger, whenever we talk about the issues of food price, we have to remember that there is enough food in the world to feed double the population. There is no crisis. There is no shortage in the amount of food. So therefore, what drives people to hunger? And in 2008, what drove 250 million more people into the hunger, bringing the world figure to over 1 billion? What did it? It's the price of food. It's when the food price goes up and up and up. That's when people starve, because in this country, we might find it inconvenient to spend $5, $6, $7 for a dozen eggs. But in another country where you're spending 80% of your income each day on food, those kinds of price increases drive you into famine. And so what I discovered was a new kind of investment that really hit full stride right around the time that the food prices went up, and that was the commodity index fund. And so that's what I wrote about in Harper's, about how Wall Street was actually behind this outrageous statistic of more than 1 billion hungry people on Earth.
It's absolutely amazing, Frederick. And we're talking with Fred Kaufman, who wrote the cover article, the current issue of Harper's, and you got to read this thing. We saw Wall Street after the Commodities Futures Modernization Act was passed, Phil Graham's brilliant little piece of legislation that Bill Clinton enthusiastically signed off on in '99, as I recall, maybe it was 2000, that it allowed them to turn money into a commodity. In fact, not even the money, but bets on bets on bets on the promise of money into a commodity that could be bought and sold. And so we have $600 trillion worth of derivatives out there right now, according to the Bank of International Settlements, which, compared to the $65 trillion world GDP. And back in the 90s, and I'm wondering, was this a part of the deregulation of the Reagan-Bush era or what? The banks decided that they would make some money off, corn and hog bellies and soybeans, things that traditionally were traded between buyers and sellers as a way of hedging their bets, that actually stabilized the market. And when the banksters got in, they just, as you point out in the article, everybody was just buying long. In other words, they were screwing up the market, but they made a hell of a lot of money doing it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right on all points there, Tom. And I think one of the things that we have to get over when we discuss the food bubble and we discuss what happened in agricultural markets is everybody's eyes just glaze over and their brains turn off when we start talking about wheat futures or corn futures. And I was the same way until I realized that it's precisely that turnoff, it's precisely that glazing of the eyes, which the bankers are exploiting to their own advantage. The fact that we don't understand, most people don't understand it, the fact that they are able to manipulate it in their own particular way, and this is what I discovered. So that's the first thing we have to keep in mind, is that we actually can understand this, that when people talk about longs and shorts, those are not the most difficult ideas in the world.
And the second thing, Fred, we just have a half a minute left here. And
And the second thing is that you're absolutely right about deregulation. This starts in the Reagan years. It's a 20-year process. And you're also right about stabilization, which is that the bankers have a stake in destabilized grain markets. I mean, that's the real outrage here, is that they're seeking to destabilize markets so that they can profit on rising prices, except they've forgotten that there is reality and there is fiction. And their fiction might be a beautiful mathematical formula that they can get rich on, but the reality is people need food to eat.
Right. The more they destabilize markets, the more they make money off that instability, whether it's food markets or whether it's money markets, cash market. It's just absolutely incredible. The bankers responsible for a billion hungry people, 49 million in the United States. Fred Kaufman, pick up the current copy of Harper's, harpers.org. You can check it out. But buy the copy in the newsstand. It's amazing. Fred, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Tom.